All right, so right now, I guess pop quiz style. Think of all the maestros, Am I saying that word right? Is it maestros? Is it maestros? Is it maestros like Mr. Jinx from the Pixie and Dixie cartoons? I have no idea. I'm going to say maestros because it sounds the coolest to me. But how many maestros do you, dear listener, know? How many can you think of? How many come to mind? If one comes to mind, then you are miles ahead of where I was circa, I don't know, like 3 months or so when I was made aware of a certain individual. Like, sure, I've seen like the word, it is a thing that exists in the world, but like no one ever says it, no one ever uses it. And personally, I didn't know a maestro from a hole in the ground. That was before the one thing that I have used to learn more than anything else in the entire world. And no, I'm not talking about school or any kind of higher education, but of course, I am talking about the deadly combo of Google and Wikipedia. Google specifically in this case. The deeper I went, the more fascinating the information. Actually, wait. Where in the hell are my manners? Because I didn't tell y'all a thing about who I am or a thing about what this is. So let's remedy that real quick. Me, Zach. Yo, you know what it is. You don't know what it is, actually. I know that's the thing that gets said, but in this case, it is patently false because I literally just told you that I haven't told you what this is. I'm talking myself in circles. I hope y'all are following this. This, of course, being the Fairly KickAss podcast, where we sit in our 6th year. Count it 6, not full years, but 5.x number of years of doing this thing. It's a music podcast. We talk about music things, and that includes our Unsung series, where we discuss some of the figures in the music industry that aren't as well known and who maybe haven't gotten the shine that they deserve for their contributions to the industry. A few examples of this episode type from previous iterations include pop producer to the stars, Max Martin, which you may have heard more recently since we did run that back as a rewind, I believe originally recorded in 2023. A lot of our older episodes are slowly being converted and are being made available on a broader scale on more platforms than just Spotify. So we'll tell you exactly how to find those once this episode is done. I got to stop saying we as well, because there's only me today. There's only Zach. Typically, it's a 3-person operation from the hosting standpoint with Jay and Dan. But these unsung episodes are a little bit smaller, a little bit more bite-sized, and they're typically just a 1-person show. So here you are. It's me in the flesh. A couple of other examples of unsungs that we've done in the past are discussions on 2 of the progenitors of hip hop, being Grandmaster Caz and Big Bang Hank, as well as Bernard Purdy, whose eponymous shuffle drum beat you've heard several times without even realizing it. That's the level that we're looking at here. Folks that haven't been as much in the public eye and haven't been as much tied to the influence that they've had over the years as perhaps they should. So all of that being said, Zach, Fairly KickAss podcast, Unsung, yada, yada, yada. That brings us back to Maestros. And you didn't think we'd get back here, because I didn't think we'd get back here either. But we did. We finally pulled it together. We know what's going on here. Everyone has their handy dandy map. You remember paper maps? Yeah, those are a relic. And this podcast is going to be a relic if I don't actually get to what we're talking about. So Googling. Maestros. Found a lot of things in my Googling exploits. There apparently was a pro wrestler named the Maestro. There was a car. There was a Marvel character, apparently an offshoot of the Incredible Hulk, that was named Maestro. The guy who made the Exorcist song made a video game called Maestro. Apparently it was a whole thing. Also like a bajillion movies, whatever. Like every word has like a ton of movies made after it. So that one's not terribly exciting. But I feel good about making the statement that none of those maestros that I had mentioned, even the Exorcist song guy, Mike Oldfield, has had as much impact on the music industry as vocal instructor to the stars, that being Maestro David Kyle. It was hard, admittedly, to find a ton of information on David Kyle. So credit up front goes to both Robert Lunte and his website, thevocalstudio.com, and Chad McMurray and his personal website, chadmcmurray.com. You may be familiar with that name, but it is not that guy. If you are familiar with the Chad Michael McMurray of One Tree Hill fame and several other things, different dude altogether, same name, different guy. This Chad McMurray being of the band Rivet Skull. And many thanks to him and Robert Lunte for all of the information that they have provided on the internet about David Kyle. From what I could find, he was born in April of 1918, spending a good amount of time as a metaphysics teacher in Seattle. He also, more relevant to our story, spent over 3 decades as a vocal instructor with a studio in Carnegie Hall, to go along with about the same amount of time in Seattle and a relative cup of coffee of like 4 years in San Francisco before his passing in November of 2004 at the age of 86. During that time, some of the absolute greatest voices in popular music history filed through his doors, and by all accounts, he had left an indelible mark on each and every one of them, both in terms of what they have learned from him, as well as what they have provided to us, to all of us, to the listening public, with their wonderful, amazing vocal stylings throughout their various careers. Alongside the aforementioned Robert Lunte and Chad McMurray, who both themselves not only have a treasure trove of information on Maestro David Kyle, but also were students of David Kyle in their own right, and as such had a front row seat to some of his brilliance. But to that list, let's add one Jeff Tate. Now, we did an episode here recently of our Rush episode type, which is essentially us discussing a Mount Rushmore of a certain topic. The three of us discuss, we collaborate, we argue in some cases, and we come up with a consensus Mount Rushmore for the topic that all three of us can mostly agree with. And the most recent Rush that we did was on hair metal songs. And Jeff Tate, the lead singer of One Queensryche, was featured prominently in that episode due to the fact that Queensryche fucking rocks, and also due to the fact that Jeff Tate's voice is absolutely immaculate. And certainly David Kyle was a large part of that. So one right there. Let's add to that list, according to Robert Lunte, in a video that he posted to YouTube some time ago, quote, "Some guys from Dokken." I'm going to assume that Don Dokken was one of those guys. Pretty rad vocalist in his own right, but very possibly other members of the band Dokken as well, also being influenced by David Kyle. What about the legendary Lane Staley of Alice in Chains fame? What about two of my very favorite vocalists of all time, perhaps number 1A and 1B, if I had to produce a list of my favorite vocalists of all time, being Ann Wilson from Heart and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden and Audioslave. All of which, at least according to what I could find, had some instruction, some amount of instruction, and some amount of influence from the same person. It is wild to think about, and we are going to produce a playlist on Spotify of some examples of some of the vocal brilliance of these artists that you'll be able to listen to either alongside or probably best after listening to this episode. There is a lot of difference, certainly, between these vocalists, between these acts. Like putting Lane Staley up next to Ann Wilson, it's not a comparison of like who's better or worse, but it's a comparison of like apples and, I don't know, tennis balls, like completely different things. But the one thing that can be gleaned from both of them is that they are utterly brilliant in their own right. And focusing on the vocals of these tracks, and we'll try to find some that are very vocal forward, I think that will help really shine the spotlight on each of those individual artists. So excited myself for this playlist I'll be listening to as well. On top of that, not just popular musicians, that were instructed by David Kyle. In fact, after having, a studio in New York City in Carnegie Hall, having, his work that he did in Seattle, in San Francisco, the fact that there are only a handful of popular known artists that have been mentioned as students of David Kyle, certainly there are more. Certainly there are some that we just have no idea about because I couldn't find them, and it's just something that is buried. And unfortunately, with Kyle having passed on some time ago, I feel like there's probably a good amount of information that is going to be lost to time. But at least we can take in his brilliance as a part of the work of his students. On top of the more popular musicians I mentioned, two others that I wanted to point out as well being classical singers, but no less impressive in their own rights. Both of them multiple Grammy Award nominees, both of them Grammy Award winners, and interestingly, both of them mezzo-sopranos, Frederica von Stade and Marilyn Horne. As best I could tell, because classical music is not at all my forte, I think that was a joke. I think that was a music joke. Let's assume that it was. By all accounts, two of the absolute premier classical vocalists, at the very least, two of the premier mezzo-soprano classical vocalists of the last fill in the blank number of years. Like very prominent, heaps and heaps of awards. Like I said, Grammy Award winners, both of them, and both of them being instructed and influenced to some extent by, again, the same guy that taught Chris Cornell and Lane Staley and Ann Wilson. The range of those styles is incredible. That one person would have had any kind of influence on all of these same individuals is nothing short of astonishing. And yet, here we are. I guess that's what you need to do in order to earn the title of Maestro. As I mentioned before, those are the ones we know of. Those are the ones that I was able to find scouring the internet, scouring Google, scouring YouTube. That's not a complete list. I have no doubt about that. And I am hopeful at some point in time, excited for some time to hear another mention or to come across another mention of a student of David Kyle's that I didn't know about previously, because certainly there are several that are lurking out there. But even if there aren't, even if this is the sum total of what we have to work with, yeah, I think this is a pretty damn decent group in and of itself. And obviously not knowing exactly what Kyle brought to the table or, the extent of what was learned from Kyle for all these amazing, talented artists, I can at least say that, even though these individuals would have been great no matter what, I think to be as good of a vocalist and as prominent and as unique of a vocalist as these folks are, it's not an accident. It certainly was not because of the tutelage of one person. There certainly were likely other instructors in some cases. But I feel very confident in saying that, considering the same person has popped up in so many of the paths of these artists, I feel pretty confident that there was something good going on there. There was something significant that all of these artists took from David Kyle and have been able to translate into vocal brilliance for years, for decades, well after Kyle's passing, with his memory living on through the music and through the voices that in many cases are still going strong of these artists. So very cool to kind of see legacy, is really what we're talking about. And what better legacy to leave, than the beautiful voices of a group of talented individuals. That seems like as good of a stamp of approval as any you could think of. So I think that's where we're going to end our foray into Maestro David Kyle there. But before we get out of here, before I get out of here, we always, listeners, want your stamp of approval of what you thought, how each episode was, whether it's an Unsung, whether it's a Rush, a Billboard re-rank episode, a top 5, a someone's, whatever type there is. There are probably 5 or 6 more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but we always like feedback. We like feedback on the type of episode. We like feedback on the individual episodes, the logo, which of our voices are the most annoying. I think you're probably listening to one of three there. Whatever it is, we want to hear about it. We want to hear from you, however you would like to communicate with us. If social media is your thing, you can find us at Fairly KickAss on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. You can find us over email if you prefer that, fairlykickass@gmail.com. Fairlykickass.com. Our website is your source for our ride-along playlist for this episode, for most episodes. Admittedly, we are a bit backlogged with some of those. We're trying to get some of the previous episodes out so you can also follow along with the music that we talk about. And you'll find that, as well as this episode, on the website. We're working on our kind of end-of-year content. We'd like to do a lot of things in the month of December that are specific to the end of the year. We have a couple other irons in the fire as well that we're not quite ready to discuss yet. Some exciting things that we are going to be launching here in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned for that. How do you stay tuned, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, because you can come to anywhere. That's it. Literally. Find us where you find podcasts. It's that easy. Search for Fairly KickAss on your podcast provider of choice. We will pop up. You will see our podcast. You will see all of the previous episodes, or I should say a lot of the previous episodes. We did transition from Spotify, so we do have several episodes that previous episodes, I want to say as of May of 2024 is that cutoff. So anything prior to that is going to be a Spotify exclusive unless we've re-released it here after May of 2024. So keep being on the lookout for those rewind episodes where we do that. If there is a provider where you can't find us, then please let us know in all the ways I just mentioned, and we will make sure to get there as well. And as we have finally gotten here to the end of the episode, as always, we want to implore you, nay, to beg you, to always keep kicking ass.